State prosecutors began making their case to a Georgia grand jury today, potentially leading to charges against Donald Trump surrounding the aftermath of the 2020 presidential election results in Georgia. A document, 2 pages, seemingly outlining the charges, appeared briefly on the court's website and then was removed. Any charge would be the culmination of a 2-year investigation that began with the now infamous audio tape, apparently of Donald Trump lobbying for changes to the Georgia count. We're going to talk about what is happening in Georgia, what this may be leading to. Gwen Keys Fleming is with me this morning. She is the former, sorry Gwen, not this morning. I normally work in the morning shift and my clock is backwards. It is afternoon and evening, but you are Gwen and you are the former district attorney in DeKalb County in Georgia. Welcome to Power and Politics. I'm happy to meet you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Can you just to help us maybe get some insight into what happened earlier this afternoon? As I mentioned, that document went up on the website, then it was taken down. Reuters did report on it, but what do you make of it and the potential impact of it?
Well, I think we won't know really what happened until we see any final indictment document, if there is one ultimately. But I will say that at least in my office, when I was the district attorney, we would very often create a calendar for the grand jury. It was an internal document solely for the DA's staff so that witnesses would know when they needed to appear, so that the assistant district attorneys could organize their day about when they needed to present, particularly some of the more complex cases. So there is a possibility that this might have been an internal document that just simply listed some charges that the DA was thinking about as she is presenting evidence to the grand jury, which I believe we all know is happening today. So it could be very similar to what we might see, or it could be fictitious, the way I believe the clerk's office has labeled it in their most latest report.
Exactly. We got that statement and that exact word, fictitious, later in the day. But as you suggest, we do know that prosecutors began to present to that grand jury today. Help us understand at this point in the process what's involved at this stage.
Sure. So the grand jury is a group of up to 23 citizens, or 23 residents of the county. They will ultimately hear evidence from witnesses. Hearsay is allowed. The defendant or any defendant is not allowed in the grand jury. The DA will present various witnesses to testify about elements of whatever crimes she believes she has sufficient evidence to prove. So in this particular case, it could be things like a RICO indictment. It could be things like false statements, all of which are on, or it could be forgery or solicitation to commit any of these crimes, all of which are under Title 16, the crimes section of the Georgia Code. It could also include charges such as conspiracy to commit election fraud or interference with elections. Those are all crimes under Title 21 of the Elections Code. So whatever crimes the DA believes she has sufficient evidence for, she will list them in a piece of paper called an indictment or a draft indictment. Those witnesses will testify under oath. The grand jurors have the opportunity to ask questions, and the case will progress until the grand jury is satisfied that it has enough information to make a decision. As long as there are 16 folks in the room, they have a quorum, and they can move to vote on whether they believe there's probable cause or sufficient evidence for the case to go forward. They only need 12 of the 16, or the majority, to go forward with an official indictment. If the grand jurors do not believe that there's sufficient evidence of a particular crime, they would vote no, which then is what's called a no bill, meaning there is not enough evidence to go forward with that particular charge.
If they do believe there is enough evidence and do vote to go ahead with indictments, what would be the time frame then? How soon thereafter would we expect to see charges officially announced?
So the routine process is in a normal case, and again, we're not necessarily dealing with normal here. This is sort of a precedential matter, but they would still follow presumably the normal course, which is once the grand jury makes its vote, They will take the document. It will be sealed or put in an envelope and delivered by a sheriff to a presiding judge, who would then, quote unquote, read the indictment. It's not actually reading it out loud, but it's presented. It needs to be presented in open court, where it is stamped by the clerk. And at that point, it becomes an official court document. Usually soon after that, or contemporaneously with that, the case is then assigned to a judge. And then we move forward with the normal course of a criminal matter, including arraignment, the opportunity for pretrial motions. I think in this case, we will see the DA make an outreach to some of the defense attorneys that are known to have represented different witnesses or targets in the past. They will no doubt make arrangements for any targets or potential defendants to turn themselves in, make arrangements for bail. And then ultimately, we'll see when and if an arraignment date is set.
You mentioned the district attorney from neighboring Fulton County. It is Fani Willis. I'm wondering, it sounds like we're going to be hearing and getting to know her a lot over the days and weeks to come. What do you know of her? What should we know of her?
So she, first of all, is a consummate professional. She's been a prosecutor for several decades. She's handled several high-profile cases, including very complex RICO cases, similar to the one that many are speculating this case may turn out to be. She is someone who adheres to her oath. She has obviously earned the trust and respect of the residents of Fulton County who voted her into office. And so she is taking that oath seriously, and will follow it in terms of not letting distractions or other matters deter her from going wherever the evidence leads her. And that is what we're seeing. She's taken now 2 years to really deliberately evaluate that evidence. The special grand jury, which was an investigative grand jury, heard from 75 witnesses over the course of just under a year. And now Ms. Willis, or DA Willis, has the opportunity to take that evidence, those recommendations, along with the evidence presented by witnesses that we presume are testifying in front of the grand jury now, and move forward with the case in a way that, again, hopefully within the next 24 hours or less, we may know what that grand jury has ultimately decided.
You've mentioned on a couple of occasions Georgia's RICO law, and this could be under the indictment RICO charges. And we've talked about that on this program actually last week, but I'd like your perspective on this. RICO standing for Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. It was legislation meant to look into and to investigate criminal organizations. I'm wondering how you see it working in this context and whether you think it would be the appropriate use of the law.
So the RICO statute in Georgia is a really great tool for prosecutors who have complex matters that involve different individuals who have done different activities, all in furtherance of a common goal, or and have used what they call a pattern of racketeering activity, which is really just simply any one or any two of the statutes that are listed as predicate crimes. And so for this particular matter, it includes crimes such as forgery, in terms of if she chooses to pursue charges for the fake elector scheme. It includes false statements. It includes false swearing. All of these, it includes criminal trespass or the solicitation of any of these crimes. And so using the RICO statute could be an appropriate use if the DA decides that she has multiple defendants, but they are all connected by a common story to hold on to or maintain an enterprise, and use the pattern of racketeering activity or several of the underlying predicate crimes to be able to maintain that control.
Gwen Keyes-Fleming, thank you so much for sharing your important insight as we begin what could be a very eventful week. Thanks so much.